The city of Orion was quiet now, too quiet. Just a few days ago it was filled with music, light, and families laughing in the streets. Now the buildings were broken, the air was heavy with dust, and smoke covered the sky. Now the war had come too fast. Nobody expected the machine legions to destroy so much in so little time. Princess Liana walked through the empty street, holding the edges of her torn pale dress to keep from slipping on the rubble. She was young, no more than 20, and she looked lost in the shadows of what had once been her home. Every step made a small sound that echoed through the ruined walls. She kept looking around, afraid something or someone might still be watching her. She remembered the night the city fell. Sound of explosions, the screams, the lights going out one by one. Her mother, Queen Mara, had pushed her into a secret tunnel under the palace floor, whispering that she must survive no matter what. Liana wanted to stay and fight, but soldiers carried her away before she could say one more word. When she came out again, the palace was gone, and everything around her was burning. Now, she had nothing. No guards, no family by her side, and no idea where safety could be found. The machines were still out there somewhere, hunting survivors, scanning the ground with their red lights. Liana felt her heart race each time she heard a strange sound. She moved slowly along the old bridge that crossed the river, trying not to draw attention to herself. Far away, under that same bridge, Captain Ethan Cross lay half buried in dust and broken stones. The last thing he remembered was his team shouting warnings, the blast knocking him flat, and then total darkness. When he came back to his senses, silence surrounded him. His helmet was cracked, and his shoulder hurt badly from the fall. His rifle was still beside him, warm from earlier firing. Ethan sat up, breathing slowly. He was trained for battles, but the sight of Orion's ruin made his chest tighten. He had seen war before, but nothing like this. The machines had come without mercy, burning towns that had never harmed anyone. His squad had fought bravely to defend the royal capital, but one by one they had fallen. Now he was the only one left. He looked toward the city through the smoke. Somewhere in there, he thought, there might still be people alive. Maybe even the princess. He had promised to protect her when their forces joined the kingdom's defense. A promise was a heavy thing for Ethan. He didn't let go of one easily. With effort, he pushed himself up and tested his weapon. It still worked. His armor was dented and scratched, but the core battery glowed weakly. He took a drink from a cracked canteen, wiped the blood from his forehead, and started walking toward the city. He didn't feel like a hero. He felt tired, beaten, human. But deep down, he carried something that machines could never copy, a heart that refused to give up. By sunset, Liana had found a small shelter near the edge of the marketplace. It was an old bakery. The smell of burnt bread still hung in the air. She sat in the corner, pulling her knees close to her chest, trying not to cry. She hadn't eaten properly in 2 days. Every sound outside made her flinch. Then she heard footsteps. Slow, careful, measured. Her breath caught in her throat. She looked around, searching for a place to hide. Shadow moved across the doorway, tall and rough-shaped. Liana picked up a piece of broken glass and held it like a knife. The door creaked open. For a moment there was only light from the fire outside, and then the figure stepped in. It was a man in scarred armor, carrying a rifle. His face was tired, but his eyes were calm and focused. He looked around the room before his gaze settled on her. Ethan saw the fear in her eyes and lowered his weapon. "You don't need that," he said in a quiet, steady voice. "I'm not your enemy." Liana stayed silent, not sure if she could believe him. He knelt slowly, placing his rifle on the ground, to show he meant no harm. "Captain Ethan Cross," he said. "Terran Expeditionary Corps. I fought for this city." The name sounded familiar. Liana took a careful step forward. You're one of Mother's protectors?" she asked. He nodded once. "If your mother is Queen Mara, then yes." Something inside her broke then, a mix of relief and grief. She lowered the piece of glass and let out a shaky breath. "She was taken," she whispered. "The machines took her." "I don't know where." Ethan's jaw tightened. "And we'll find her," he said firmly. Liana blinked. He stood, picking up his rifle again. "You're not alone anymore, Princess." Outside, the wind moved through the broken streets of Orion. The city still smoked and groaned like a wounded giant. But in the middle of the ruin, there was now a small spark of soldier and a princess. Two survivors with one purpose yet to be fulfilled. And somewhere far away, beyond the silent hills, the first faint rays of morning light started to show, promising that the night of fear was almost over. The morning sun rose weakly over the broken city, touching the rooftops of Orion with pale gold light. Smoke still hung over the streets, and the sound of falling stones echoed through the distance. Princess Leanna and Captain Ethan Cross stepped out of the bakery where they had spent the night. Both looked tired, both covered in soot, but their eyes held a small spark that hadn't been there before. Ethan checked his weapon and scanned the nearby street. The machines had not returned yet, but he knew they never stayed gone for long. They moved like shadows without sound or mercy. He had seen enough of their attacks to know they came in waves. The quiet time was never safe. It was only a pause before the next storm. Liana followed a few steps behind him. Her feet were sore, and her dress was dirty and torn, but she didn't complain. She had decided that silence was better than fear. Each time she looked at Ethan's back, she felt a strange calm. He moved with purpose, always watching, always ready. "We can't stay here," he said after a moment, his voice low but firm. "The enemy is still searching. We need to move to higher ground. From there, we can look for signs of the Queen." Liana nodded quickly. Her mother's name gave her energy. "Do you think she's alive?" she asked. Ethan looked at her but didn't answer right away. "I believe she is," he said finally. "Your mother is strong, and she knows how to survive. I've seen her bravery before." They walked down the empty street toward the old Citadel Road. The path was covered with ashes and bits of broken metal, but the pair kept moving. Ethan helped Liana climb over fallen beams, and more than once she slipped, catching herself on his arm. Every time he gave her a small smile, though pain flickered behind his eyes. After some hours they reached a wide crossroads where the royal banners once flew. Only a single pole remained, bent and burned. Liana looked at it and felt her heart sink. "This was where we celebrated the harvest festival," she said softly. "There were lights everywhere, and songs. It's all gone now." Ethan turned toward her. "Not all," he said. "You're still here. That means the spirit of this place is still breathing." She didn't answer, but his words stayed with her. They found a working water pipe nearby, and Ethan filled his canteen. He handed it to Liana first, letting her drink before him. While she sipped carefully, he opened a small map tablet from his pocket. The screen flickered, showing parts of the city still active with heat readings. In the center of the map was a bright marquette, pulsed slowly like a heartbeat. "That signal," Liana said, pointing. "It might be the Queen. It's coming from the mountains near the Citadel." Liana gasped. "Then we have to go there now." He shook his head. "It's not that simple. The way is dangerous. We'll need food, power, and shelter along the route. We should travel at night and rest when it's light. They track movement during the day." Liana wanted to argue, but she could see from his face that he wouldn't change his plan. He was a soldier. He knew how to survive. She decided to trust him. By afternoon, they left the city center and moved toward the forest outside the walls. The silence there was even heavier than in the streets. Every tree seemed to whisper secrets through dry leaves. Ethan walked first, scanning ahead. Behind him, Liana followed, stepping where he stepped. Once they stopped near a fallen guard tower to rest, Liana sat on a stone, her eyes half closed from exhaustion. Ethan watched her quietly for a moment. She looked nothing like the young royal he had seen at the welcoming ceremony weeks ago. That girl had worn silver and lace, surrounded by laughter and guards. The one sitting near him now was bruised, sweaty, and barefoot. But there was strength in her eyes, a spark that made Ethan almost smile. "Do you think all humans are like you?" she asked suddenly. He looked up surprised. "Like me?" "Yes," she said. "Brave and stubborn." A short laugh escaped him before he could stop it. "Maybe not all. Some are foolish, some afraid. But when things fall apart, someone usually stands up. That's what we are. We stand." Liana thought about that in silence. Then she nodded slowly. "Then I'll stand too," she said. The words made him proud in a quiet way. As evening came, they reached the edge of a broken railway leading toward the mountain path. The sky turned red and gold above them, and for a moment, everything looked almost peaceful. Ethan found an old shelter by the tracks. Inside, there was a half-broken lamp and some dry food hidden in a metal box. It wasn't much, but it was enough for one meal. They ate slowly, sharing water between bites. Liana looked up at the stars appearing above the hills. "My mother used to tell me each star was a memory," she said softly. "If one fades, it means someone has been forgotten." Ethan gazed at the same sky. "Then none of your people will be forgotten," he said. "Not while I'm still breathing." The wind moved through the trees outside, soft but cold. In the dim light, the captain and the princess sat quietly together, two strangers bound by a single promise. The city behind them was broken, but ahead lay the mountains, and perhaps hope itself. The next morning came quietly, with a thin mist rising from the forest floor. Ethan woke first. Years of training had taught him to wake before the sun. He listened carefully, only the soft sound of wind through the trees and the distant call of birds. For the first time in days, there was no sign of danger. Liana still slept beside the small fire they had made from broken wood. Her face looked peaceful, though faint lines of worry showed even in rest. The dirt on her cheeks could not hide the gentle look of kindness she carried. Ethan found himself watching her for a moment. She had become tougher in only a few days. There was courage behind her tired eyes now, the kind that came from pain and survival. He looked down at the device strapped to his arm. The faint signal he had tracked the night before still blinked weakly. It came from the direction of the mountains far to the north. If the queen was really there, they had a long road ahead. When Liana stirred, rubbing her eyes, Ethan handed her a small piece of dry bread. "Eat slowly," he said. "We will need our strength. It's a long walk ahead." She smiled a little, even though the bread was hard and tasteless. "You always sound sure of yourself," she said. "I have too," he answered, putting away their gear. "If I don't sound sure, who will?" They left the forest behind and made their way across the open hill paths. The air was cold, but clean. The sunlight stretched over the land like soft gold, touching everything that had survived the war. Along the road, they passed the remains of a farm. A wagon lay on its side, its wheels broken. Liana stopped for a moment and knelt beside a small patch of wildflowers growing near the ashes. "My people once worked here," she whispered. "They built this world with their hands." Ethan placed his hand gently on her shoulder. "Then we'll help them rebuild." "Oh, that's what humans do. We fall, but we get up again." They continued walking. Every few hours they stopped to rest or drink water. Ethan avoided open ground, where enemies might spot them, choosing side paths hidden by trees or rocks. Sometimes they found old signs left by other soldiers. A carved arrow here, a mark of chalk there, gave Ethan hope that maybe others had survived too. By the time the sun sat low, the mountains rose clearly in front of them. The peaks looked sharp against the orange sky. At their base stood the stone road leading to the great citadel, where Liana's mother might still be. They camped near a stream that night. The water was cold, but it felt good to wash the dirt from their faces. While Liana gathered branches, Ethan made a small fire and checked his weapon. The sound of crackling flames made the silence less heavy. Liana watched the sparks float up into the air and disappear. "Captain," she said softly, "were you ever afraid before this? I mean, truly afraid?" Ethan looked into the fire. Eyes reflected the orange light. "Many times," he said. "Fear never really leaves us. But courage is not about being without fear. It's about walking forward, even when fear is heavy on your back." Liana listened quietly, letting his words settle inside her. She had never thought of courage that way before. Later, as the stars came out, she spoke again. "You said you promised to protect my family. Why would you come so far from your home for us?" Ethan took a long breath before answering. "Your world asks for help. Humanity helps humanity. You're not strangers when we share the same sky. Besides, promises matter. My father once said a person is only as good as the word they keep." Liana smiled faintly. "He must have been a good man." "He was," Ethan said. "And he would tell me to keep going right now." They both laughed softly, the first real laugh either had managed since the war began. For a short while, they forgot the pain, the fear, and the destruction that surrounded them. The night above the mountains felt almost safe. In the middle of the night, a distant rumble broke the calm. Ethan rose quickly, his body tense. He moved toward the edge of the trees and looked into the valley below. Bright lights flickered near the old fortress walls. He lifted his small scope and focused. Shapes moved in the distance machine, scanning the area. They were repairing something near the main gates. He turned to Liana. "We need to move before dawn. They're rebuilding their defenses. It means someone important is held inside. It could be your mother." Liana stood at once, fear and hope mixing inside her. "Then we can't wait," she said. Ethan nodded. "Not much longer. We'll rest a few hours, then climb before sunrise. Stay close to me the whole way." Before lying back down, Liana looked up at the stars again. They seemed closer now, brighter than before. She whispered a small prayer for her mother and for the brave man standing guard beside her. Ethan stayed awake, watching the horizon, the rifle resting across his knees. The wind blew cold against his armor, but his heart was steady. He had fought many battles, but this one felt different. This one was for hope itself. And as the moonlight touched the princess's face, he knew he would do whatever it took to bring her mother back to her. The night passed slowly, filled with quiet courage and the promise of one final climb toward destiny. The next day began before the first light touched the sky. Ethan shook Liana's shoulder gently to wake her. The air was cold, and the world around them was gray with morning fog. The mountains towered above, dark and silent. He spoke in a quiet voice. "It's time. We move now before they see us." Liana nodded and rubbed her eyes. She felt tired, but her fear had turned into determination. She helped Ethan cover the last of the campfire with dirt, leaving no trace behind. When they were ready, they started up the mountain path, the stones rough under their feet. The road was steep and twisted. Once, it must have been a safe road for merchants and soldiers returning to the citadel. Now it was broken, full of fallen rocks and strange marks left by the machines. Every few minutes, Ethan stopped, checked the map on his wrist device, and watched the fog below them for movement. After some hours, they reached a small ledge where they could rest. From there, they could see most of the valley below. The ruins of Orion looked tiny and far away. Smoke still rose in thin lines from the parts that were burning. Liana stood beside him, her hair blown by the cold wind. "It looks so peaceful from here," she whispered. "But I know it's not." Ethan kept his eyes on the horizon. "Yes. That's how war tricks you. It hides the pain under quiet mornings like this one." They moved again. The higher they went, the thinner the air became. Ethan knew they were getting close when he saw the black walls of the citadel appear between the cliffs ahead. Tall towers reached into the gray sky, half broken and covered in dust. Liana's heart sped up. "That's it," she said, almost unable to breathe. "Mother is in there. I can feel it." Ethan raised a hand to stop her from running forward. "Wait, we must be careful. The enemy has machines guarding the gates. We'll have to find another way in." They followed a narrow path around the side of the mountain until they came to an old watchtower built partly into the rock. The stairs inside were broken, but Ethan helped Liana climb through the gaps. Inside, they found a small window that overlooked the citadel courtyard below. From there, they saw what waited for them. Hundreds of metal sentries stood in a line, glowing faintly in the dim light. They moved like one body, each step in perfect time. In the center of them was a large cage of light. Inside it sat a woman in a torn royal dress, Queen Mara. Liana gasped and covered her mouth with her hands. "It's her," she cried softly. "She's alive." Ethan's jaw tightened as he looked through his scope. "They're using energy walls. One wrong move and the cage will close forever. We have to bring the power source down first." He studied the machine's movement for a while, memorizing their pattern. Then he turned to Liana. "Listen carefully. I'm going to draw their attention. When they move toward me, you go for your mother. There is a control terminal by the wall to her right. Use it to lower the cage. I'll keep them busy." Liana shook her head quickly. "No. You'll be killed if you go alone." He smiled slightly. "I've faced worse. You must trust me." Tears formed in her eyes, but she nodded. "Promise me you'll come back." I promise." As the sun broke over the mountains, casting gold light across the stone walls, Ethan moved down the path toward the citadel. His boots left soft prints in the dust. He carried his rifle close, his face calm and focused. Lyanna watched from the tower, her heart pounding. When he reached the edge of the courtyard, he took a deep breath and opened fire. The sound echoed through the mountain. Sparks flew as the first machines fell. The rest turned their heads toward him, bright red lights flashing. Ethan moved fast, rolling behind fallen pillars, firing in short bursts. The enemy spread out, chasing the sound of his weapon. He shouted and fired again, keeping their eyes away from the queen and her daughter. He whispered under his breath. From above, Lyanna ran down the hidden stairs, gripping the small dagger Ethan had given her earlier. Her feet barely made a sound. She reached the courtyard wall and found the control panel glowing beside the cage. Her hands shook as she pressed the buttons. The light flickered, but it didn't open. She tried again, tears streaming down her face. "Come on," she whispered. "Please work." Finally, the cage's bright walls shivered and then melted away. Queen Mara fell forward, weak and trembling. Lyanna rushed to her, pulling her into her arms. "Mother, it's me," she said. "I'm here." Mara looked up at her in disbelief, then began to cry. "Lyanna, you're alive." Behind them, explosions shook the courtyard. Ethan was still fighting, moving closer to them through smoke and fire. "Go," he shouted. "Get to the tower." Lyanna helped her mother to her feet. They started toward the path, but a wall collapsed behind them, cutting the way off. Ethan ran through the dust, his armor damaged, his weapon nearly empty. He reached them just in time, pulling them toward another passage that led deeper into the citadel's main hall. The three of them stumbled together as the structure shook around them. The sounds of battle filled the air, but inside those halls was something new hope. Queen Mara looked at Ethan with tears on her face. "You risked everything for us," she said, nodded once, breathing hard. "It's not over yet, Your Majesty. But you're safe now." The mountain winds roared outside, carrying away the smoke of the burning machines. The citadel was falling apart, but the life of one mother and her daughter was no longer in the hands of war. And through it all, Captain Ethan Cross stood unbroken, ready to face whatever came next. Smoke filled the halls of the citadel as the walls trembled around them. Ethan moved ahead, clearing the path while Lyanna helped her mother walk. Queen Mara was weak, her legs shaking, but she refused to stop. Every few steps, debris fell from the ceiling, shaking the ground beneath their feet. The noise behind them grew louder. The machines were regrouping. Ethan's eyes searched for a way out. He saw a passage that led upward and pointed toward it. That way, he called. His voice was rough from the smoke, but it carried strength. "Follow me and stay close." They climbed the stone steps, the sound of battle fading below. The passage opened onto a wide balcony overlooking the valley. The wind rushed past them, cold and sharp. From there they could see the machines still moving below, circling like shadows in the fog. Lyanna helped her mother sit down beside the wall, then turned to Ethan. "We can't go back down," she said, her voice tight with fear. "They're everywhere." Ethan nodded. "We won't go down. We'll go through." Before she could ask what he meant, he raised his rifle again and aimed at the large fuel tank on the far edge of the courtyard. With a single shot, a fire began to spread. The machines turned toward the flame, their attention drawn away from the balcony. "Let's move while they're distracted," Ethan said. He led them into an old corridor near the outer tower. The air smelled of dust and age. The lights on the high walls flickered weakly, running on what little power remained. They walked carefully, each sound echoing loud in the silence. The queen leaned on her daughter's shoulder, breathing slowly. "I thought I would never see you again," she whispered. Lyanna squeezed her hand. "You taught me to survive, Mother. You always said bravery comes from love." Ethan glanced at them but said nothing. The words reminded him of his own mother long ago, in another time and another city that had also fallen to war. For a moment, he felt the heaviness of his past pressing against his heart, but he pushed it aside. There was still work to do. They reached the end of the corridor where a large door stood half open. Beyond it was a bridge that stretched across a deep ravine. On the other side, the path would lead to freedom and safety. But the bridge's support ropes were damaged. Pieces of wood were missing. It looked dangerous and unstable. "We have no choice," Ethan said. "It's this way or back to the fire." Liana helped her mother step onto the bridge first. Plank creaked under their feet. The wind howled and tore at their clothes as they moved slowly forward. Halfway across, the sound of heavy steps came from behind. The machines had found them again. Ethan turned back, raising his weapon. "Go!" he shouted. "Don't stop." Liana shook her head. "You can't fight them alone." "Yes, I can," he said with a half-smile. "That's what I'm here for." He fired at the first row of metal figures approaching through the smoke. The explosions echoed against the cliffs. The bridge shook violently from the shock. Liana and the Queen reached the other side, but Ethan was still near the middle. "Ethan," Liana cried out. "Come on, please." He fired one last time into the support beams of the citadel wall. The structure began to crumble. Dust and flame rose high as the machines fell into the pit below. Then Ethan ran, the bridge breaking apart beneath his feet. He jumped at the last second, landing hard on the safe side, just as the bridge collapsed behind him. For a long moment, none of them spoke. The wind carried the sound of cracking stone and rolling fire from the destroyed citadel. Ethan lay on his back, breathing heavily, staring up at the sky that was slowly turning blue. Liana knelt beside him, tears shining in her eyes. "You made it," she said, her voice shaking with relief. He smiled weakly. "Told you I don't fail missions." The Queen slowly knelt beside them, placing her hand on his shoulder. "You have done more than any soldier could," she said. "You saved not just my life, but my daughter's, and with her the hope of our people." Ethan shook his head softly. "Hope saved itself, Your Majesty. I only gave it a chance to breathe again." They made their way down the mountain path together. The morning sun grew brighter, pushing away the smoke. Below them, the land stretched wide and green, scarred by battle, but still alive. Birds began to sing in the distance. For the first time, the world around them felt alive again. When they reached the valley floor, survivors began to appear from the nearby hillsmen, women and children who had hidden during the invasion. They looked weak, but smiled when they saw their queen and the princess alive. The crowd gathered, whispering the same words again and again. The human soldiers saved them. Ethan stood beside Liana and her mother. Watching as people knelt before the returning royal family, he did not see himself as a hero. All he saw were faces filled with faith again, and that was enough. Liana turned to him with tears of joy. "Yes, Mom," she said softly. "I'm safe." Queen Mara pulled her daughter close, then looked at Ethan with deep gratitude. "You gave us back our future," she said. Ethan looked out across the valley where sunlight now touched every ruined corner. "It wasn't me alone," he said quietly. "It was every human heart that refused to surrender." The wind grew warm as the sun climbed higher. The city of Orion had fallen, but its people had not. Standing on the quiet field, Captain Ethan Cross finally allowed himself to rest. A world once broken began to heal, carried by the courage and love that still lived within them all.